Utterly exhausted from our swim inland, we finally reached a small collection of rotting wooden docks here along the shoreline, the tiny village of Oolahtz directly to the south. Remaining in the water, we quickly surveyed the village. Only a few dozen buildings stood here, a stone wall encircling the hamlet as if the people here genuinely feared an attack. We didn't see anyone, so it looked like we could sneak onto the docks and proceed south. Nodding to one another, we slowly dragged ourselves up onto the wooden piers, so very glad to finally be out of the water. Keeping as quiet as we could, we wrung ourselves out and caught our breaths, then removed the disguises from within the small wooden barrels and donned the clothing, hoping to blend in with the Chagarian townsfolk here. We made it, Redfern whispered in between breaths. Now what? We need a place to camp, Eswin instructed, all of us needing as much sleep as we could get right now. It looks like there is a campsite up ahead, Ariana suggested, pointing toward the southwest. We can try pitching our tents there and blending in. Despite the encounter with the juvenile Kraken, and our heroic defense of the White Rose, we had made it to Chagaria, safe and sound. Proceeding south away from the docks and toward the public campsite, we found a small shop made of brick that was old and crumbling, yet contained just about every type of stone, crystal, and rock imaginable. While we weren't especially interested in the buying or selling of gems and jewelry at the moment, we decided to stop in anyway. Inside, the jeweler here seemed quite suspicious of us from the start, and my instinct was to beware. Something wasn't right. He may have had gems to buy and sell, but I suspected that he was going to be trouble, and so we prepared ourselves. Haven't seen the likes of you before, the older human grumbled, initiating a half-hearted conversation. When did you arrive? We couldn't tell the jeweler the truth. He'd likely turn us over to the authorities in a heartbeat. Hence, I had to respond with some sort of lie. Our business is our own, Eswin suddenly responded, surprising even me. I can respect that, the jeweler replied. We're all free to do as we will. You there, cleric? The jeweler suddenly shouted, speaking directly to Sainairs. You're wearing red. Yes, that's right. Sainairs responded sheepishly, not sure what to think. Red is the color of bloodshed, the jeweler continued, quickly growing hostile. Are you here to spill my blood? Of course not. The Sislan replied, a bit shocked. Why would you even think? Out of my shop, now, you wretched murderer. No color makes one a murderer, Eswin criticized. Where in Sicilus did you learn something like that? Sir, I am a Sislan, sworn to the sanctity of life, Sainairs replied, offended. Red is my favorite color, it does not make me a murderer. I believe it does. The jeweler cried, his anger inexplicable. It's my right to believe whatever I want. If I say red makes you a killer, then it's so. The jeweler seemed to be stating that so long as he believed in something, regardless of how silly it may have seemed, that made it real. Lomtora, this is Chagaria, where nearly everyone consumes the nemfruit to transform their thoughts into reality, Kartha whispered in my ear. There is almost no line between what people believe and what is actually true. We also need to keep a low profile, Ariana whispered into my other ear, reminding me of the greater good. Humor this man if you want to do business with him. Ariana was right, of course, there was little to be gained by arguing with someone so totally detached from reality. So, either I needed to ask everyone wearing red to wait outside, or we needed to leave now and skip doing business with the jeweler altogether. Wanting to do a little business with the jeweler, and hoping to learn more from him, I asked everyone wearing red to step outside the old building and wait for our transactions to be completed, quickly removing anything offensive myself during the commotion. A minute later, several of my heroes waiting outside, I was ready to do business. That's better, the strange man commented, his behavior seemingly justified. Now, what do you want? Carrying a few gems, I sold them for gold pieces, the transaction quickly completed. Not surprisingly, the jeweler showed no sign of gratitude for my business. Now, if I were looking to buy some nemfruit, where would I go? I then asked, hoping that the jeweler might share some valuable information. The village center usually has some lying about, free for any wishing you may want to do, the older man replied. Normally you could get all you want from the Nemesis Garden to the east, but someone's been stealing from it lately, so the Master Ultimate has us all cut off for the time being. Master Ultimate? I asked, being careful not to ask too many questions. Were you born yesterday? The jeweler ridiculed, surprised by my naivete. The ultimate that governs our village, he's all-powerful and all-knowing. If he does not already know about you, he will very soon. Recognizing a warning when I heard one, it sounded like we would want to stay clear of this master ultimate. Having had enough of the jeweler, I bowed and departed the building, joining my party back outside. Continuing south, tucked between the boundary wall and the village proper was a wide swath of forested land, a sort of makeshift park that was full of worn, light grey tents. There were easily several dozen tents here, haphazardly spread about without any real planning or structure to them, each capable of holding just one or two humanoid occupants. There does not seem to be anyone about, Ariana observed, looking for a good place for our party to settle down. We should make camp before anyone spies us here. Agreed, Eswin added. But let's try to keep away from the villagers here as best we can. Working quickly, we found a more secluded spot within the public campsite and pitched our tents, being careful not to attract any undue attention. My heroes then spent the next hour or so cleaning themselves up, having a bite to eat and generally relaxing. I wonder where everyone is? Sainairs commented, looking about. Other than the jeweler, we haven't seen a single soul since we arrived. I will look about and report back, Ariana offered, stepping away to do a quick search of the general area. Ariana snuck about, investigated a few tents, felt a spent campfire or two and generally assessed the public campsite area. She then returned some 20 minutes later, a little concerned. There are humans in most of the tents but they seem to be sleeping, all of them. The campsite here is well used, I am guessing there are several dozen people scattered about. And oh, most of the tents reek with the stench of nemfruit. Deciding to temporarily vacate our camp for a little while and see if we could find anyone, to talk to, we spent nearly the next hour wandering about. Finally, an old woman slowly stepped out of her tent, a worn burlap sack over her shoulder and the human trembling a bit as we made our way to her. Are you well? Kartha was the first to ask, genuinely concerned for the lady. At first, she didn't notice us. The old woman's eyes then flared with surprise and she suddenly looked scared. What do you want? The woman nervously called out, her eyes darting to each of us. What can you tell us of your village? Redfern asked, trying to calm the scared human as well. Nothing, came the quick response. We're all just beggars, do you have fruit? You mean nemfruit? Sainairs asked, displeased. You should stay away from that poison. And you should stay away from me. The old woman shouted, having had enough. Before we could say another word, the human rushed back into her tent and closed the flap covering the doorway, begging us to go away. Did you see the way she was trembling? Kartha asked in a low whisper, still just outside the woman's tent. Something has her scared to death. That would explain why we're not seeing anyone outside of these tents, Eswin replied, looking about. It's as if half the village here is too scared to do anything. I am sure being addicted to the nemfruit does not help, Sainairs criticized, disgusted. All these people here are in serious need of help. Perhaps, Eswin responded, sure of what not to do here. But we're in no position to help anyone, we need to keep a low profile and not be caught. Agreed, Redfern nodded, sadly. The more these villagers consume the fruit, the more their humanity is being stripped away. We probably can't help these people even if we wanted to, they're too far gone. Back to our own camp, then? Ariana asked, not seeing any other viable options. My heroes agreed and minutes later we found ourselves back at our campsite, our desire to talk to someone a failure. Spending much of the day to rest and recover, we decided to leave our camp around mid-afternoon and continue along the path south to see what else we could find, reaching what appeared to be the most southwestern building within Oolahtz a short time later. Here, we found an old and dilapidated construction, like most of the other buildings within the village. Yet this one was unique, originally painted in a variety of bright, contrasting colors and now decorated with all manner of wild plants and flowers, to the point where it seemed strangely appealing. Stepping inside, we were quickly met by a suave, well-mannered, middle-aged man who directed us to all the various potions he had available for purchase. The merchant watched our every move and we couldn't help but feel a little intimidated here. Still, we were free to buy or sell all the potions we wished, so we quickly stocked up on over a dozen healing potions. You are foreigners to Chegaria, the man continued after our transactions, surprising us. I am Nanuit, and I see you don't belong here. Oh, this primitive alchemist seemed to know our true identity somehow. After several anxious moments, the witch doctor continued. I don't care that you are here. But the ultimates, they are always watching for threats to their dominion, and they will soon find you, if they haven't already. How do you know about us? I asked, cautious yet curious. How would I not know is the better question, the witch doctor returned, a bit aggressive yet still respectful. All of you carry a sense of power about you, something lacking from nearly all who dwell in this miserable hamlet. You are in grave danger here. We're aware of the danger, Kartha answered on my behalf. But I sense you know something we don't. Nanuit stared at Kartha for a long moment before continuing. You're not the first outsiders to come here with the intention of attacking the ultimates, and they know that, Nanuit continued, his expression most serious. Not only do they have spies everywhere, but they even have the magical power to simply know when they are under threat. They will come for you very soon if you don't flee at once. The witch doctor seemed quite convincing. Indeed, my natural instincts kicking in, I was fairly sure that Nanuit was being completely honest with us. The ultimates apparently had the ability to detect us magically, and we were all in grave danger. I can brew a concoction that will help you evade the magical scrying of the ultimates, the witch doctor continued. Its effects will be temporary, but it may buy you time to do what you've come here for. And why would you help us? Eswin asked suspiciously. What's in this for you? The ultimates have ruled Chagaria for decades, Nanuit began, his voice reduced to a whisper. The Nemphrid has corrupted them beyond the ability to discern reality from fantasy, and now they rule from a position of both absolute authority and near infantile madness. They can't be reasoned with, they can only be destroyed. That's quite the paradox, Redfern responded. How can the ultimates run an entire country without the ability to reason or face reality? By keeping the people so drugged that they can't discern reality from fantasy either, Nanuit replied. Nemphrid is everywhere, so prevalent that virtually everyone prefers to dwell in their own hazy shadow of reality than deal with reality head-on. Our government literally feeds the people an endless supply of lies and deceit. Until the Nemphrid is no more, we can never hope to escape. We were under the impression that the ultimates were merely tyrants that ruled their people with an iron fist, Kartha replied, sensing that I felt the same way. We had no idea that the people see nothing wrong with their way of life. We really can't help them unless they first try to help themselves. You seem different, Eswin logically pointed out, spinning the conversation in a new direction. How is that you see things so differently? Why not just consume the Nemphrid like everyone else? Again, I know of a way to shield the mind from the prying eyes of the ultimates, Nanuit replied, still distressed and even paranoid. But I represent a tiny minority who can still see clearly, and my antidote won't last forever. If you're here to deal with the ultimates, I would prefer that it happen sooner than later. Fair enough, Kartha responded with a nod. What must we do to help? The village's supply of Nemphrid is grown in a garden to the northeast, next to the Master Ultimate's estate, the witch doctor continued, pointing in the appropriate direction. I need the root of the plant to make more of my concoction. It's very difficult to secure and I am totally out. Northeast, got it, Eswin replied, accepting the instructions from the witch doctor. Beware, as the garden is magically guarded, Nanuit warned, drawing immediate concern from your fellow party heroes. Without a special key, the gate will disintegrate you. There are a few magical stones that are needed to enter the garden, which act like keys, the witch doctor continued, showing us a small piece of glassy obsidian that appeared to glow somewhat. I have one, but I dare not show my face around the garden. Wait until cover of darkness, then sneak into the garden and cut one root from the plants that are there. Be sure to leave nothing disturbed. If the Master Ultimate even thinks that his garden has been raided, he will likely murder the entire village. Nanuit held out the magical stone in his outstretched palm. My party in agreement, I gently retrieved the small chunk of obsidian from the witch doctor, stowing it away within a convenient pocket. Nanuit then nodded in agreement, ending the conversation and sending us on our way. Heading east away from the witch doctor, we quickly found the only tavern of the village, its atmosphere dark and smoky and the revolting scent of Nemphrid contaminating the air. A variety of patrons stood about, most of whom looked depressed as they were occasionally served by an older human waitress. While the food was bland and unappetizing, for a gold piece we were able to fill our bellies and listen for local rumors as we waited for the nighttime to sneak into the garden to the northeast. The first rumor we heard had to do with the witch doctor we had just seen. Supposedly, Nanuit was recently bitten by a werewolf while gathering herbs to the south of Oolahtz. Now, with the next full moon, the witch doctor was likely to terrorize the village and massacre many of its citizens. The rumor seemed quite false and we simply laughed it off. An hour later, we heard another rumor regarding the complete loss of Nemfruit. The Master Ultimate had closed the Nemesis Garden, so there wouldn't be any more Nemfruit to consume for a while. However, there was still some fruit left at the village center, the perfect place to relax, consume, and wish away, so we decided to head north and have a look for ourselves. Roughly marking the center of Oolahtz, this outdoor location held the village public well and was therefore the primary source of water for most within town, and subsequent informal meeting area. Indeed, a variety of townspeople were here, talking amongst themselves, scooping water into buckets and tolerating one another's company. A small, roofed, single-floor enclosure stood just to the south of the well. From our current vantage point, however, we couldn't see what was inside. Peering into one of the open windows, we saw a few cots lying on the floor, one of them occupied by a townsperson lying down. The remainder of the tiny building was filled with all manner of junk and debris. "What is this, some sort of public rest area?" Eswin asked, looking about. "I smell that Nemfruit stuff," Ariana replied, its distinct odor quite distasteful. "It's coming from inside." "I don't see any ultimates, just a few townspeople," Redfern offered. "Let's go look." Stepping into the small enclosure, we found it barely able to fit all of us along with the villager here and all the junk lying about. The stench of the Nemfruit was much stronger as well, to the point where we had to cover our noses to lessen its stench. We then spotted a small table containing several Nemfruit slices, the blackened produce of the Nemesis plant. By now we had learned there was magical power in these fruits, but there was also a poison that robbed its consumers of their conscience. Hence, we wanted nothing to do with the stuff. A younger townswoman here slowly opened her eyes and looked at us, then closed them again as if needing her sleep. "Excuse me," I began, nearly whispering so we didn't disturb the villager too much. "Can I ask what you're doing?" The young woman slowly opened her eyes again and looked to me, responding a moment later. "Is this your first wishing? We have plenty of fruit, lie down, try some, and wish away." It appeared the woman was suggesting that I could take a piece of the Nemfruit, lie down on a cot like she was doing, close my eyes and then perhaps wish for something? Could it really be that easy? Eyeing the fruit and considering the possibilities, the woman lying near me slowly raised her hand to her mouth and chewed the last bit of Nemfruit she was holding. Almost instantly, a surge of power seemed to rush through her, causing her back to arch somewhat before drawing a deep breath and relaxing again. "I don't like the looks of this," Redfern muttered, all of us carefully watching the woman. "I wish," the woman whispered, holding out the open palm of her hand. "I wish for a poisoned dagger, so that I can kill the woman who stole my husband." A moment later, a small, plain dagger appeared within her outstretched palm, droplets of poison adhering to the blade's edge. Her eyes still closed, the woman smiled, grabbed the dagger by its protective hilt, then lowered her arm again, the magic apparently complete. Redfern stepped alongside me, quite concerned by what we had just witnessed. "I thought the Nemfruit was only used by magic users," Redfern commented, almost shocked. "Apparently here in Chegaria, anyone can make use of its evil power." The young woman's eyes suddenly flew wide open and she sat up almost as if she were under a spell. While neutral toward us and even a little cordial moments ago, she now appeared quite determined and almost sneered at me as she rose to her feet, the poisoned dagger firmly in her grip. "You're drugged, sister," Kartha called out, attempting to stop the woman from doing something wicked. "It's the Nemfruit, let go of your hate for this rival and come to your senses." The woman turned toward Kartha and snarled like a wild animal. Not only had the Nemfruit provided the means to commit murder, but it apparently was greatly fueling the will to slay as well. For several moments, the woman simply stood there, continuing to hiss at Kartha but struggling internally over what to do. The mutant then approached her and put a comforting hand upon her shoulder, trying to counter the effects of the Nemfruit with further words of wisdom and understanding. "My sister, taking a life will only set you down a dark and painful path. Please, resist the Nemfruit. Drop the dagger and walk away." Tense moments passed. The young woman then began to cry, dropping the dagger and apparently overcoming the poison of the Nemfruit. Kartha gave the woman a heartfelt embrace, then the villager turned and ran out into the streets of Oolahtz, saved by Kartha's compassion. "Absolute power corrupts absolutely," Eswin commented, watching the woman disappear beyond. "Agreed," Kartha replied, angered by the experience. "Let's leave this wicked place." About to leave, I suddenly had a dark thought. We were here in Chegaria for a reason, and if we could determine the whereabouts of the one plant, even if it was very risky to do so, that would help our cause immensely. We had just witnessed firsthand how the Nemphrid could poison the soul, but given everything we had been through and all the good that we had done, maybe, perhaps, a little of the fruit, just enough to reveal the whereabouts of the one plant, would be an acceptable risk. I have an idea, but none of you are going to like it, I announced to my friends, their surprise well warranted. I know this Nemphrid is poisonous and very dangerous, but maybe it can tell us the location of the one plant, which is why we're here in Chegaria. What do you think? Are you suggesting that you consume the fruit and wish for the location of the one plant? Red Fern asked, almost shocked by the suggestion. Absolutely not. Kartha cried out, quite disturbed by the suggestion. We can't risk the leader of our party becoming evil and heartless. We've all witnessed the honor and sacrifice of Lam Taurus since the evil root forest, Sainairs continued, surprisingly open to the idea. I can't see her succumbing to evil and darkness even if an entire bush of Nemphrid were consumed. Maybe we should try this. No, I should try this, Red Fern announced, surprising even myself. I am already a magic user, so I can best fight off the effects of the Nemphrid. I also trust that each of you will help me should the poison be too much to overcome. After several more minutes of intense discussion, my party decided, over the adamant objection of Kartha, to have Red Fern try a single piece of Nemphrid and wish for the location of the one plant. Knowing what to do, Red Fern took a single slice of Nemphrid from the nearby table and laid down on one of the cots, our party encircling him. The wizard relaxed, then raised the Nemphrid to his lips. Are you sure about this? Eswin asked. Red Fern nodded affirmatively, then consumed the disgusting fruit. The wizard nearly gagged on the poison of the Nemphrid, its power flowing through him but attacking his conscience and soul as well. Red Fern began to spasm, then relaxed as the magic reached its full effect. The magic user opened his eyes, his whites replaced with inky darkness. He then whispered his wish, demanding to know the location of the one plant. Immediately, Red Fern buckled over in extreme pain, the poison appeared to be fighting his wish. The pain intensified and both Sainairs and Kartha took his hands to apply their own healing energies, likely saving him from any permanent damage. Tense moments later, the magic user regained consciousness and turned to me, whispering into my ear. The one plant is located in Jep. Jep is the capital city of this wicked country, Kartha spat, still not convinced the risk of consuming the Nemphrid had been worth the reward. Trying to sit up on his own, my heroes helped Red Fern, the brave but perhaps foolhardy magic user regaining his senses. I imagine the city of Jep is a large place, Ariana suggested. Any idea where in Jep we should look? To divulge the specific whereabouts of the one plant within Jep would have taken so much Nemphrid that it would have easily killed me, Red Fern responded honestly, ready to regain his feet. But at least we have a place to start. Thankful for Red Fern's sacrifice, we helped Red Fern to stand, then departed the tiny construction, glad to have the experience over with. Back outside of the open construction again, we were free to draw some fresh water from the well here to refill our water skins. We then watched as another young woman we had never seen before stepped into the tiny wooden building, apparently about to try her own wishing. My initial instinct was to force her away, but we needed to keep a low profile within the village, so we left the woman to her fate. And that's a wrap of episode number 36, Intruders of Oolahtz Part 1. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.